I no longer read the text of the proclamation aloud. However, it is available in the council meeting minutes, and I am delighted that we are celebrating Black History Month in the month of February. Next up is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the report of the city manager. Ms. Terry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Jessica. As you can see from the graph, our COVID-19 cases within King County have decreased significantly from the peak on January 10th, and public health officials are expressing optimism that this trend will continue. At our last meeting, the reported daily average of cases was 3,551 cases per day. The county is now seeing less than half that number, which is a little over 1,500. So even though we're seeing a dramatic drop in cases per day, we should not consider ourselves out of the pandemic because we are still at a higher point than we had been in any previous waves of the pandemic. The county's rates of new COVID hospitalizations have also seen a sharp decrease, now averaging 35 hospitalizations a day. Shoreline's case rate has also decreased. At our peak on January 10th, Shoreline was averaging 82 new cases per day, and now we are averaging 48 cases a day with one daily hospitalization. We continue to encourage people to take precautions as we are still in the midst of this pandemic, and even in spite of the significant reduction in cases. It is still the same recommendations that we have stated for 2 years almost now, but to continue to wear a high quality close fitting mask on your face, such as an N95, a KN95, or a KF94. Avoid crowded indoor settings, maximize indoor air quality with ventilation. If you have symptoms, please get tested and then stay home and away from others. If you have not yet been vaccinated, we urge you to do so. And if you are eligible to receive a booster, we encourage you to get one. You can schedule a vaccine appointment by contacting your health provider or visit covidvaccinewa.org for other available locations. We hope that our community will join Shore Lake Arts and to celebrate the Lunar New Year and welcome the Year of the Tiger. This is an event that the city is also helping to co-sponsor. This event will happen through February 15th with hundreds of lanterns and local artwork being on display at Munka Brewing and Uplift Climbing. On Saturday, February 12th, you can visit Munka Brewing at 4 p.m. for a lion dance and kung fu performances. This event aims to bring people together in honor and recognition of our North King County Asian communities in a COVID-safe format. Stop by and celebrate traditional and contemporary Asian culture, food, art, and music. You can visit shorelakearts.org/lantern for more information. And we are thrilled to announce that the Teen Center at the Richmond Highlands Recreation Center is reopening. Middle and high school students are invited to join us for our grand reopening on Friday, February 11th from 2:30 to 11 p.m. We'll have pizza and snacks after school, and Azel's is catering dinner starting at 6 p.m. Activities include laser tag, Xbox, basketball, necklace making, and more. Regular hours for the Teen Center are 2:30 to 6 p.m. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 1:30 to 6 p.m. on Wednesdays, and 2:30 to 11 p.m. on Fridays, and 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. on Saturdays. Proof of vaccination or a negative test taken within 72 hours are required for entry, and masks are required inside the building. You can visit shorelinewa.gov/teens for a full calendar of all the activities we have on the schedule. And we are thrilled to see each member of our community that chooses to come. Just a reminder that tomorrow is February 8th, which is the special election. Ballots are due by Tuesday for the February 8th special election. There are 2 ballot boxes within Shoreline located at the Shoreline Library and at the Shoreline Park and Ride. Those ballot boxes are open 24/7 until 8 p.m. on Tuesday, February For accessibility options for voting and more information about the election, you can visit kingcounty.gov/elections. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Ms. Terry. Next up on the agenda are council reports. Do any council members have reports? Councilmember Povey.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the privilege of attending Seashore Transportation Forum for the first time. And again, thanks to Councilmember Mcclelland, I was elected as co-chair. And so I've been dropped in deep, and it's quite a privilege. I love that. So we had two presentations, and we looked at King County pilot program, and just looking at the scooter pilot and the actual looking at the original approach. I guess it was really interesting to look at, but the really building in great infrastructure to accommodate that, and looking at the coordinating details and the data that is involved in making conclusion, I think is very informative. What really impressed me was the regional approach as we take into consideration trip planning. So, services available on smartphones, website, and all the micro mobility options that are available for this project to take place. So it was a lot of information and really enjoyed that. The second presentation was from Regional Transportation Plan. We looked at the overview of it. There are two key objectives, and that is making progress on existing challenges and then addressing current and future needs of the transportation system. And this is about, building from Vision 2050. And the second objective was, to plan for long-term system investments to accommodate future growth. And so, I think it was quite impressive looking at the plans that are in place and the strategies that are being put together to make sure that our region enjoys the best when it comes to transportation. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and congratulations on your appointments. Councilmember Mork.
Thank you. I attended the first Regional Water Quality Committee meeting. The Regional Water Quality is King County. It's led by Reagan Dunn. There are two other King County council members who are on it. And the SCA is the organization that I'm part of that's on it, but also MUPAC, which is where the sewer district direct people are with, and the city of Seattle are on it. And we discussed, amongst other things, the work plan for the coming year. And we all requested that the rate portion be moved earlier in the year so that people could understand what's happening and plan for it. With the growth in the region and with the increasing concern on nutrients in the sound, there will be rate increases, and it's just a matter of when and how much. Thank you. It is quite a privilege. I agree, Councilmember Povey.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there any other council reports? All right, seeing none, the next item on our agenda is public comment. It's an opportunity for anyone to address the council on either an item on the agenda or any item of interest. We normally limit time to 3 minutes, but it's my understanding that there are 14 people signed up, which according to our rules reduces the time per person to 2 minutes, but does not require any extension of the 30-minute period we've allotted. We ask that any person speaking begin their comments with their name and city of residence. Ms. Similchek-Smith, would you please administer the public comment period?
Yes, Mayor Scully. Our first speaker is Ophelia de Bernal.
Hello, my name is Ophelia de Bernal, 30 years Shoreline city resident, and I am very concerned about the amount of trees, 23 trees that are scheduled to be cut for the constructions of sidewalks on 5th Avenue Northeast. Of course, the sidewalks are needed, but eliminating so many different specimen grown and wonderful trees to be replaced for cement 6 feet wide sidewalks will alter the character of this wonderful city. And also many things like noise, air pollution, etc. Fifth Avenue is a narrow and very busy avenue. I know that because I live right on Fifth Avenue. Considering that the city decided to make the sidewalk 6 feet wide, both sides, and also making bicycle lanes, is going to make Fifth Avenue even narrow. City Mayor Scully and City Council, I know that you care for this city. Please consider my request and citizen request to review this project. I wish and ask city leaders to include us, the citizens, in decisions about trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. DeBernal.
Okay, so our next speaker is Janelle Kimmerling.
Hello, I'm Janelle Kimmerling. I live in the Richmond Beach neighborhood of Shoreline. And I'm here to speak about really hearing and honestly responding to citizen input concerning new sidewalks coming to our neighborhoods. There were 218 comments made in the survey that the city gave us the opportunity to fill out regarding the new sidewalk along 20th Avenue Northwest from 195th Street to 190th, the entrance to Saltwater Park. Of those 218, there were 115 requests to save the trees. There were numerous comments about speeding cars and the need for speed bumps, 59 comments against a shared sidewalk, and the council has received 51 postcards saying the sidewalks are too wide. Sadly, I frequently hear people express their feeling that they are not listened to, such as they have already made up their minds. And the design alternatives presented in the January 12th meeting seem to back up that remark. There are 24 households along 20th, and the city planners want to force the residents to gaze at a glaring 10-foot wide strip of concrete 24/7. The sidewalks east of 20th on Richmond Beach Road are 5.5 feet wide, including the curb. They easily accommodate youngsters on bikes and scooters, elderly walkers, and runners. An 8-foot sidewalk would allow for a 2-foot buffer, 2 14-foot travel lanes, and a 12-foot strip for parking. This would make pedestrians safer and cyclists more comfortable on the streets. Best of all, it would better retain the calm rural atmosphere that we all love without completely changing the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kimmerling.
Okay, so our next speaker is Suzanne Soming.
My name is Suzanne Soming, and on behalf of Kathy Kay, I am reading her comments into the record tonight. My name is Kathy Kay, a Shoreline resident and Richmond Beach neighborhood owner for the last 25 years. The portion of 20th Avenue Northwest that is slated for new sidewalks is in front of my home. Since I have walked the neighborhood and trail in Richmond Beach for all of these years, I've gotten to know many other fellow walkers and residents. When I talk with them about the proposed 10-foot wide sidewalk, most are surprised at this width proposed by the city, and none of them want to see bicyclists on the sidewalk. All of us agree that an 8-foot wide sidewalk better fits with the character of the neighborhood, and that it would be wide enough for people walking past one another, for wheelchairs, and for strollers. We recognize that a 10-foot wide sidewalk may be appropriate for higher density areas in Shoreline, but not appropriate in residential neighborhoods such as Richmond Beach. In summary, our 5 primary points regarding the new sidewalk on 20th Avenue Northwest are: 1, we are in favor of a sidewalk on 20th Avenue Northwest. 2, we are not in favor of a 10-foot wide sidewalk. 3, we are not in favor of sharing the sidewalk with bicyclists. 4, we do not want trees removed or impact by the new sidewalk. And 5, we want speeding stopped on 20th Avenue Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soming and Ms. Kay.
Next up is Rebecca Jones.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones in Seattle, 16-year prior resident of Shoreline with family still in residence. Council's decision tonight will have definite consequence on the number of non-hazardous healthy trees cut down in Shoreline neighborhoods. As background, in the Engineering Development Manual 2016 through 2020, sidewalks abutting single-family residentials uses shall be 5 feet wide. As authorized by the Director of Public Works, the width of single-family residential sidewalks changed in 2021 to 6 feet wide for single-family residential. However, it is noted that there can be exceptions. 2021 Engineering Development Manual, page 78, section 14.2, item C, quote, where practical, alternative sidewalk design may be required to protect significant trees, unquote. In the Transportation Master Plan, page 79, policy 38.4, quote, street plan to address site-specific circumstances such as the presence of large trees, unquote. As I understand from information provided by the city, protection of trees can include sidewalk reductions down to 4 feet width to minimize impact on trees. The policies I have cited are appropriate measures for the preservation of trees. Fifth Avenue Northeast is a narrow tree-lined street that contributes to our urban canopy and the character of Shoreline. The loss of these trees would be significant on multiple levels. We ask Council to reconsider the design along Fifth Avenue Northeast. We also ask Council to reconsider the width of many new sidewalks being constructed in Shoreline to accommodate the healthy trees that support our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Next is Barbara Johnstone.
Barbara Johnstone, Shoreline. The focus of my comments today is the loss of mature trees through current and future sidewalk projects. Losses the council could reduce considerably with direction to city staff regarding the routing and width of the sidewalks. As noted, Shoreline's Transportation Master Plan, Policy 38.4, page 179, quote, allows for flexibility in the implementation of master street plan to address site-specific, unique, or unforeseen circumstances, such as large trees. In many of Shoreline's policies, the routing of sidewalks around trees is stated, and the width of sidewalks is another area for flexibility. It seems there is enough policy to ensure our mature trees would be protected. Unfortunately, this is not apparent in the design for the new sidewalk along Fifth Avenue Northeast, where 23 tall mature trees will be cut down for 6 foot wide sidewalks. And it's a huge concern for other neighborhoods with 6 foot or even 10 foot sidewalks like on 20th Avenue, changing the character of the neighborhoods and putting more mature trees at risk. In 2018, when the new sidewalk program was passed, by 52% of the voters, the engineering manual specified 5 foot wide sidewalks in residential neighborhoods. Now it is a minimum 6 feet in the manual. We ask you, Council, to request that staff revise the design for the sidewalks along Fifth Avenue Northeast and to give staff direction regarding the width of sidewalks in residential neighborhoods to preserve the neighborhood character and especially to preserve the mature trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnstone.
Next is Mike Parker.
Hello, folks. Mike Parker, 17 years in Richmond Beach. Thanks for your time tonight. I am concerned with the proposed design for the new sidewalk on 20th Northwest, just a few blocks from where we live. The proposed design is for a 10-foot wide shared use sidewalk along one side of the street. I support having a safe and proper sidewalk on this street. However, I am concerned about safety for pedestrians and cyclists. At the community meeting on January 12th, the city project manager, Laura Reiter, stated that one of the goals for the new sidewalk was safety. I don't understand how a bi-directional sidewalk shared by cyclists and pedestrians squares with that goal. This sidewalk will run 4 blocks in a neighborhood. It is not comparable to other shared use paths in the area, such as the Burke Gilman or the path around Green Lake. Guidelines need to be established. Users need to comply with these guidelines. Seattle Parks Department receives a steady stream of complaints from pedestrians and cyclists that use the Green Lake path. Pedestrians are threatened by or sometimes run into by cyclists. Cyclists are obstructed and slowed down by pedestrians. Pedestrians with dogs or small children or those with disabilities increase the potential hazards. During the pandemic, bicycles were not allowed on the path and the traffic flow was changed to one direction. Complaints lessened dramatically. Finally, pedestrians are the most vulnerable and their safety should be the first priority. Cyclists prefer to function as a roadway vehicle, I being one of them for 55 years. I urge you to decrease the width of the sidewalk in my neighborhood and allow for a separate bike lane. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Next is Bill Turner.
Hi, my name is Bill Turner. I am a Richmond Highlands neighborhood resident for 25 years. I'd like to comment tonight specifically about the sidewalk widths and the removal of mature trees. I know sidewalks are expensive. The first sidewalk in the new sidewalk program to be designed and completed is on First Avenue Northeast, from Northeast 193rd to Northeast 195th. This sidewalk is 11 feet wide, approximately 3 blocks long. Its design and construction totaled about $938,000. According to the 2018 voter information, the budget funded by taxpayers is about $95 million for 15 sidewalks and any remaining funds that can be used for repairing existing sidewalks and building additional ones. It would be a win-win for the neighborhoods and the character of our city if the new sidewalk program sidewalks could be narrower. This would allow more sidewalks to be built in Shoreline's residential neighborhoods. In addition, trees would be saved. I, for one, would heartily support sidewalks that narrow it in a short section to save a significant tree or a critical root zone. Please consider alternative to the 10-foot wide and 11-foot wide sidewalk that are being designed now and probably along other streets in this program. It appears that residents along 20th Avenue Northwest are proposing an 8-foot wide sidewalk, not 10-foot wide. I'm also asking you to consider alternative widths for the 6-foot wide sidewalks along 5th Avenue Northeast and the planned sidewalks for Dayton Avenue North. These are beautifully treed sections of roadway. We need to save those trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
What did I do?
Next is Nancy Morris.
Hello, Nancy Morris, Shoreline. I have major concerns on the sidewalk plans for Shoreline. Shoreline managerial staff has a history of making poor decisions by not considering long-term ramifications. Example, think back to 2017 when principal staff proposed to clear 4 acres of pristine woods in Hamlin Park for a major city utility yard and roadway. It was only through considerable citizen activism and packing City Hall that this bad staff proposal was stopped at the final hour by the City Council taking Hamlin Park off the list. The 4 acres were saved. We can't pack City Hall now but considerable citizen effort has gone into asking principal city staff and city council to reconsider the proposed sidewalk plan for Shoreline. We don't need 6-foot sidewalks on Fifth Avenue Northeast. When the new sidewalk program was voted on, sidewalks were only 5 feet wide up until 2021. This was before United Nations recently warned all nations we are headed for a global climate catastrophe. No one knew significant trees would be destroyed because sidewalks width increased and without consideration for current climate emergencies of heat waves and heat islands in urban communities. Shoreline's comprehensive plan, community design, CD 37, established a goal, quote, to minimize the removal of existing vegetation, especially mature trees, when improving streets or developing property, end quote. Council, you are our last refuge in all this. It is not too late to see the trees for what they are, climate fighting resources to help protect all of us, and see the need to redesign and reduce the width of new sidewalk designs to help save these precious resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris.
Next up is Kathleen Russell.
This is Kathleen Russell.
Go ahead whenever you're ready, Ms. Russell.
That one was my fault. I accidentally promoted her to panelist and I put her back as attendee, and we'll unmute Ms. Russell in just a second here.
Right. Stand by while we fix technical difficulties, Ms. Russell. I apologize.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Russell, resident of Shoreline. November 2018, citizens voted on the new sidewalk program and placement of sidewalks. 28,682 ballots were returned. Approval, 14,601, 52%. Rejected, 13,389, 48%. Taxpayers are funding the new sidewalk program for 20 years. Save Shoreline Tree's first email to staff regarding the new sidewalk program was in April 2020. City management encouraged us to contact the project manager, and we did. We were told staff would know about the trees at 60% of the design. And at 60% of the design, we were informed 23 significant trees will be cut down along Fifth Avenue Northeast. The engineering development manual change in 2021 from 5 feet wide to 6 feet wide in residential neighborhood informs the intent. Per the comprehensive plan, we are trying to participate in decisions affecting our neighborhoods. We now ask council to ask staff to reconsider the 6 foot wide sidewalks along Fifth Avenue Northeast, listen to citizens about 20th Avenue Northwest, Westminster Way North, and the many additional sidewalks. We now think the surveys, the Zoom webinars, suggestions to stay in touch with project managers make no difference. We sincerely tried for 2 years at 30% design, at 60% design. We are hopeful council's discussion tonight can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell.
Next is Carla Carroll.
Hi, this is Carla Carroll. I'm a Shoreline resident. I support the new sidewalks, but I believe that citizens should have full transparency regarding the budget for the new sidewalk program. In 2018, voters approved a 0.2% sales tax for 20 years to provide $59 million for the new sidewalk program. 15 new sidewalks were approved by the voters at that time. If one takes a budget of $59 million and divides by 15 sidewalks, that is approximately $4 million per sidewalk. Now, the cost of the first installed sidewalk on First Avenue Northeast was $938,000. That sidewalk width was 11 feet and it runs for three blocks, sorry. The remaining sidewalks are different lengths and different widths. However, it's unlikely that one sidewalk would cost $4 million. So once all the ballot approved sidewalks are installed, it appears there will be significant funds, possibly 20 million remaining of the original 59 million budget. As stated in the 2018 ballot measure, these funds can be used for additional sidewalks. The 2018 sidewalk prioritization plan designated 23 sidewalks as high priority. 15 of these are included in what was approved by the voters. The council's direction this evening has consequences, not only on the widths of the 14 remaining sidewalks in the new sidewalk program, but the additional sidewalks to be funded by the unspent portion of the $59 million. Please provide us taxpayers with the full picture. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll.
Next is Lee Kime.
Hello, council members. My name is Lee Kime. I live in the Briarcrest neighborhood. And I agree with most of what's been said ahead of me and appreciate all the work that's been done for years to talk about sidewalks in our city. I support the city's plan to develop a robust multimodal transportation plan. And I'm excited about the trail along the rails coming our way and the light ring rails. Safe sidewalks and bike lanes are necessary to achieve this goal. What I don't support is removing more than absolutely necessary trees in this process. Every tree removed is a lost opportunity to sequester carbon. Any of us who understand climate science, and I know all of you council members do, would understand that to protect our Earth's atmosphere and hope for a healthy future for the planet, we must pay attention to the trees that we keep in our city and all around. So what I'm asking is no different than what's been said before me. Why not look at narrower sidewalks, cutouts, wraparounds to get around the most important trees, and possibly even reducing travel lane widths to a minimum. In my past employment, I worked with engineers a lot on projects that were asked to do things that were very unusual. Constantly asked to go back and find a new way to accommodate. So knowing that a design may not be what it's usually done, or it might be not be the easiest thing to do, but that's no reason not to innovate. This project, particularly on 5th Avenue Northeast, is scheduled for completion by 2024. So why not take time to explore the possible things to save more trees? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kime.
Next is Janet Way.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me? This is Janet Way.
We can, Ms. Way, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so I hope you received my letter that I sent this afternoon on the topic of the sidewalk issues. I hope you have a chance to look, not only read it, but look at it. I sent you in there, I think there's 5 or 6 photographs. And the photographs are of alternative sidewalk designs. Repeat after me, alternative sidewalk designs. This is what we need to have in Shoreline. The photos, one of them is of the sidewalk next to Southwoods Park, which the city installed, and it's beautiful sidewalk that goes around the trees. It has pervious pavement partially, and it's really beautiful. Then there's one on 17th, which is an amazing natural drainage system. And the mother of all projects, of course, was the Aurora project, which of course, was planting trees with the silvacells. But the main thing about that is that it was the hybrid design. Doris McConnell will remember this. There was a huge amount of controversy for years, lawsuits and everything, all about the Aurora project. When we came up with hybrid design, it was solved. And because every situation, every sidewalk situation is different. So we need alternative sidewalk designs. Please direct staff to go back to the drawing board and look at all these different sidewalks as unique projects that need unique treatment. I really appreciate if you would do that and save the trees. The trees are the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Way.
Okay, so next is Robin Mcclelland. And I see that Ms. McClelland has joined us both on the phone and the Zoom app. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the telephone. I'll also try the app.
Yeah. Ms. McClelland.
Okay.
There we go. Thank
Can
you.
you hear me now?
Yeah, we've got you. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting a lot of feedback on this, but you can hear me.
Yeah. Ms. Simmelchick-Smith, can you mute the phone and can we restart Ms. McClelland's counter?
Yes, the phone is muted.
All right. So Ms. McClelland, whenever you're ready, if you can unmute your Zoom part and then please.
How's that?
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
I learned earlier today that the issue of trees and sidewalks are going to be discussed tonight, and I wanted to weigh in as a member of the Sidewalk Advisory Committee back in 2018. And I have to say that I agree when I heard that street on 20th Northwest was proposed for 10 feet wide. It was kind of scary, but I also want to, and I also understand all the concerns about trees and losing trees. But I also would like the council to review the priority, how the sidewalk committee came to the priority list and the many different considerations that went into putting the list in order based on the needs of the people in Shoreline. And those needs include people with disabilities being able to get around without an automobile, young people being able to get around, and people moving safely. And I agree that bicycles don't belong on the sidewalk. And I fully agree with everybody who's spoken that we need to reconsider the designs and make design flexibility based on needs. But I have to reinforce that our new sidewalk program and our retail sales tax increase was intended to facilitate the mobility of the people in Shoreline. And I just hope that we all get a chance to weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McClelland.
Okay, so our last speaker is Alex Stein.
I would just like to say I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak today to you guys. My name's Alex Stein. I'm from Shoreline. I graduated from Shorewood High. You might recognize me. They call me Shoreline Stein. I was one of the best high school football players in Shoreline history, in Shorewood history. And guys, the reason I'm here today is I had NFL potential until I got diagnosed with HIV. And we still don't know how I got infected, but a lot of people and a lot of conclusions we've decided is we got it from I was a young man. I made some mistakes on Aurora Boulevard and I slept with some girls that I regret. And because of that, my whole entire life was affected. I'm immunocompromised now. COVID is the scariest thing in the entire world to me. And me making that one mistake has costed me my whole potential. And in the city, there's a lot of scuttlebutt going on that, Mayor Scully and, Councilmember Mork and Councilmember McConnell have some sort of love triangle. And that's why I'm here today, is to get to the bottom of this. Because listen, I respect Mayor Scully. I like Mayor Scully. I think he's one of the best mayors ever. But if there is something going on between him and Councilmember McConnell, I feel like the people should know. I mean, Councilmember McConnell, I know she's a very attractive woman. She's one of the most beautiful councilwomen we have. So I understand that it would be hard for Mayor Scully.
Mr. Stein, I think Ms. Similchek-Smith muted you. Personal attacks are not in order. If you want to discuss potential conspiracies, you're welcome to, but I ask that you not comment on the physical characteristics of anyone on council or anyone else in general. If he's still there, he's got another 30 seconds. Ms. Similchek-Smith,
Yes. I just want to say, I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize. I want to say everything positive. And listen, Mayor Scully, I don't believe these rumors. I think you're a stand-up guy. A lot of people will, these are the people that you're haters. I'm not here. I'm here to defend you. So Mayor Scully, that came across wrong. I understand. I just was trying to defend Councilmember McConnell because she is an attractive woman. I could see why they would have those rumors. We know it's not true. I respect you. I respect Councilmember Povey. I respect Deputy Mayor Robertson. I respect all you guys. You guys are literally one of the best councilors. I was just in Portland, Oregon. I had to leave because I got a bunch of warrants for my arrest. So all right, it's just nice. It's just nice.
Ms. Similchek-Smith, that's 2 minutes in total. Thank you, Mr. Stein. The next item is the consent calendar. Deputy Mayor Robertson.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Will the clerk please conduct the vote?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Robertson.
Aye.
Mayor Scully.
Aye.
Councilmember McConnell.
Aye.
Councilmember Povey.
Aye.
Councilmember Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Mork.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ramsdale.
Aye.
All right, the consent calendar passes unanimously. The next up is study item 8A, and it's my understanding that Ms. Junkie and Ms. Ryder will be presenting with Mr. Witt available for questions.
Mayor Scully, I need to promote them, so it will just be 30 seconds.
Sure. Ms. Junkie, whenever you're ready.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and council members. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the sidewalk programs tonight. Obviously, there is interest and great interest in protecting the trees that are impacted by these programs, and we do take those comments seriously. And while we may not answer all of those questions tonight, we do have information we want to share that will hopefully answer some of those, but we also want to leave plenty of time for you council members to ask your questions and us to be able to provide answers as well. So, and Laura Ryder is with me. She's managing our the voter approved sidewalk programs, the new sidewalks. And so she will give that update in just a few minutes. So Laura, could you do next slide? So just by way of overview, we're going to provide some background as a reminder about this program. Then Laura is going to talk about the voter approved sidewalk program. I'll provide a little bit of a reminder on the rescoring of the sidewalk prioritization plan, and then wrap up with the sidewalk rehabilitation program. And so first, by way of background, as we've heard some of tonight, in 2017, Council did establish a sidewalk advisory committee. Well, as Ms. Mcclelland mentioned, this primary focus was on the new sidewalk and the sidewalk prioritization plan. They also did look at sidewalk rehabilitation and the ADA transition plan. Then in 2018, Council adopted the sidewalk prioritization plan, and we reviewed the draft ADA transition plan. Council then went on to approve the $20 vehicle license fee for sidewalks. And the voters then approved the increase in the sales and use tax to support the new voter approved sidewalk program. Next slide. And then as a reminder, in 2019, Initiative 976 invalidated our use of license fees for the Transportation Benefit District and for our sidewalk rehabilitation program. And it took about a year for the courts to resolve that. So in that time, while we were still collecting fees, we were not spending them because we were not sure about if we would be able to eventually get them. So that program was delayed and therefore is a little bit farther behind than the sidewalk program, the new sidewalk program. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Laura and she'll give you the update on the voter approved sidewalks.
Thank you. Great. Well, as Trish said, I am the project manager from the city for the 2018 voter approved sidewalks program. So this program is 12 specific new sidewalks throughout Shoreline. We've made quite a bit of progress in the last few years, starting with the completion of the first sidewalk project on First Avenue Northeast, and that is a shared use sidewalk that filled a critical gap in our existing sidewalk network and is now a key connection to the 195th Street connector. We have also finalized design on Fifth Avenue Northeast sidewalks, and we're currently soliciting bids from contractors right now. We're also in the design phase for 20th Avenue Northwest, and I can go into a few more details on both of them in the next slides. But we've also completed an implementation plan for the remaining sidewalk projects. And as part of that work, we are able to create conceptual plans and cost estimates in order to have a finalized schedule for the remaining projects and costs and bond issuances. So more specifics on Fifth Avenue Northeast. This is sidewalks that will connect existing facilities for bikes and pedestrians south of 175th to the sidewalks currently under construction for the Sound Transit North Link Light Rail Station. We'll be putting in 6-foot sidewalks on both sides of the street because this is a transit route. And we have reduced that sidewalk to 5 feet in areas where it would save trees. In areas there are still major obstructions. There's an existing surface water pump station that has to stay outside of the travel lanes. We also have really steep slopes where we need walls. And in those sections, even a reduction of a sidewalk to 4 feet would not save any more trees. So what we've done as city staff is look at our ideal cross section, which also included 5-foot amenity zones, as is our standard. And that would have resulted in about 90 trees being removed. And through the flexibility that we have, we are able to eliminate the amenity zones through there to protect some trees. We were also able to adjust some wall designs, and that reduced the amount of tree impacts to 23. Again, with the pump station, we don't have a lot of flexibility. We've already reduced lane width to the minimum that we would ever want to go. And we still need to be able to have bike lanes or some sort of buffer between travel ways and sidewalks there. So that is briefly what we've been doing on Fifth. Then to move on to 20th Avenue Northwest, this is still in the pretty preliminary design phase. We, as staff and consulting engineers, have reviewed it. And since we are only putting sidewalks on one side of the road here, we're looking at a 10-foot proposed sidewalk. So this would be able to serve multiple purposes for people moving both directions, as opposed to some of the other sidewalks you would see on Richmond Beach and other places where there's sidewalks on both sides. This also will be able to accommodate users that already use shoulders that are bikers, young users and young bikers, but the road will still function as a sharo, and any experienced bikers are expected to stay within the roadways here. The one areas where Trees are very close to the right of way. It's right at the intersection of 190th near Saltwater Park entrance. And at that section, we're planning to narrow the road, the sidewalk to an 8-foot wide area. And we're not currently expecting any trees will be removed as part of this design. We don't know that for sure yet. We have an arborist that's scheduled and we'll be evaluating, but we expect impacts of trees to be very minimal. So a general results of our implementation work that we've been doing started with the schedule. So this was for construction year that we are hoping to get all these sidewalk projects done. As part of this work, we're looking at ways that we can save money. And so we're looking particularly for projects we can bundle together to improve contractor bids. We're also looking at delaying a few projects when we can get those hopefully partially built by developers. And in general, the schedule that we're looking at is bidding and constructing 1 to 2 sidewalk projects a year with the goals to complete the whole program by 2028. So estimated costs that we were able to develop as a result of our conceptual plans show that the total program cost for these initial 12 sidewalks is around $53.5 million. And that includes a fairly conservative 4% yearly cost escalation, as well as the cost for bond debt payments. And that's great because that shows less than what we're projecting for sales tax revenue for the program, which is about $57.5 million. So we could potentially have up to $4 million for additional sidewalk projects to be completed. But again, because this is so early in the program, we really won't know if we have those available funds until we're closer to 2/3 of the way through implementing these sidewalk projects. And for bonds, our initial bond was for $11.6 million, and that will fund all these initial sidewalk projects through 2023. We estimate that we'll need 2 more bonds in the future, probably one in 2023 for close to $19 million, and a second for $10 million in 2026. Another major thing that we've worked on as part of the implementation plan was outreach portions. So we did a full revamp of the main sidewalks page, which is available at shorelinewa.gov/sidewalks. And on that sidewalk page, we included an introduction video, some branding for the program, and we have a bunch of areas with regular updated information, including schedule. We also have a great FAQ document there. And other things we've been working on improving as part of outreach with sidewalks are opportunities for comment and feedback for the public and trying to engage marginalized communities as well. And something we recently implemented as part of the 20th Ave sidewalks was physical signage along the routes where we were looking at sidewalk, which included QR codes, which directly link you to the survey in hopes that we can engage more than just the people who live adjacent to these sidewalks, but the people who use it. We also send out letters of advance notice of upcoming work, and that is mostly for outreach. Finally, I wanted to kind of go over a few of these key issues for the program. Obviously, tree impacts are a big deal to this community, and we as staff definitely keep that in mind as we do everything. We're always trying to reduce or eliminate tree impacts anywhere possible. And that's shown with our ability to reduce sidewalk widths in small sections to save trees. I go through a full detail of the process in the staff report, and I would recommend you read that as well. So on sidewalk width and location, what we're looking at here really is supporting our master plan. So we don't want to go out there and construct sidewalks that will have to be removed in 5 to 10 years when we're adding a bike lane or we're adding something else to get the full cross section that we're looking for in these future build outs of the roadways. So we are setting the curb to support that plan, and we're choosing a width that is not only safe, but it's comfortable, and it's going to be the appropriate space for people with disabilities and accessible for everyone in the community. And finally, when we move all these projects into design, we're carefully reviewing how we can reduce costs, and some of the major impacts for costs in these projects are walls due to the steep slopes in these areas and property impacts and potential acquisition. And now I'll turn it back to you, Tricia.
Thanks, Laura. Just as a reminder, because this question has come up about the rescoring of the sidewalk prioritization.
Ms. Ryder, are you able to step in on this portion, or should we?
Do you want me to skip this portion?
No, I apologize. You froze. And I was asking
Oh.
Ms. Ryder if she could step in. If you can resume from, the last thing we heard was there has been concerns with the update process. The rest of the information was frozen.
Okay, well, good. Hopefully I've unfrozen now for the rest of the evening. So there have been questions about the rescoring of the sidewalk prioritization process. And so in 2018, when we originally did this, it was considered early work for the transportation master plan that is currently underway. And we use this to establish our priorities for the 12 voter approved projects, which is really our focus that Laura just talked about. But in 2023, we do plan to rerun the pedestrian system plan against the same criteria, but really update the data. And this will give us new scoring and will allow us to relook at priorities, particularly as we start to move through the 12 and we look at opportunities to add more routes to it. We will have new scoring that we can use to add additional routes as we get more towards mid-2025, 2026 timeframe. And then the reevaluation of the criteria along with the pedestrian system plan would happen with the next version of the transportation master plan that is currently anticipated in around 2031. And part of the reason why we want to wait to do it then is that we did do outreach with the current pedestrian sidewalk prioritization plan, and we don't intend to do that outreach in 2023. So in 2031 with the TMP, we would do the additional outreach and public involvement where people can have input on the criteria as well as the segments of sidewalks. So next slide, I will jump into the sidewalk rehabilitation program. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a little bit farther behind than the new sidewalk program. But as a reminder, the ADA transition plan is what really sets our guidance and our prioritization for our sidewalk rehabilitation. The transition plan was based upon doing a self-assessment of all of our pedestrian facilities in the right-of-way, and the cost estimate to bring everything up to standard exceeded $180 million. We certainly don't have that much, so it's going to take us a long time to start to make progress. So our initial progress in our first 5 years, we wanted to focus on complete barriers. So these are areas with significant displacements, typically caused by trees, or areas where we have sidewalks, but perhaps don't have any curb ramps to get people on or off of those sidewalks. So those are our priorities currently. If we can go to the next slide. The two projects we have in design right now are large size corridors. We have 15th Avenue Northeast, roughly from Northeast 160th to Northeast 175th. And then also 5th Avenue Northeast, south of 175th, between Northeast 165th and Northeast 175th. These two routes both have, you can see from some of those pictures, there have some significant displacements and areas where trees have really causing damage to the sidewalks. You can see in some of those that the sidewalk is narrower around the tree, but the tree is still just damaging the sidewalk, that the opportunity to kind of narrow around that really is is no longer an option in some of those locations. You can also see in those pictures where we've done some temporary or interim patches with asphalt to remove some of those displacements. And that works for an interim or short period of time, but it still is a hazard and makes it difficult to pass, particularly if there's much cross slope on the sidewalk panels. So next slide. And as we talked, as is becoming the key, is that these really are trees versus ADA compliance. And often it's hard to do both. We will look for opportunities to be compliant with ADA, which is our number one priority on these, and protect trees. We are utilizing arborists on all of our projects related to sidewalks, so they can help look for opportunities to protect trees through things such as root pruning. And then we're also having them help look at what is the health of the tree. Some trees are in better health than others. And we also, as I mentioned before, we're looking at some short-term fixes as well. We also see the trees do damage to our curbs and our roadways as well. That makes it hard for things like overlays and managing our pavement as well. So it is really a challenge to mitigate the impacts of the trees and meet compliance or these other impacts that the trees cause, but we will continue to look for those opportunities. Next slide. And then when it comes to ADA compliance, we do have ADA standards, and there are somewhat different standards between the new sidewalks and what we do when we do alterations and repairs. We do have some ability for some narrower sidewalks and cutouts around trees for some very short segments. But again, in many of these locations, we're seeing on 15th and 5th, we've already narrowed the sidewalk around the tree. There's not a lot of leeway to narrow any further. In areas where we do need to remove the tree and it's already been narrowed, then our goal is to patch back when we put in the new sidewalk to match the width of the existing sidewalk. We're not trying to expand the width of the sidewalk to meet the current sidewalk standards. We're just trying to match what's already out there. The next slide. And with that, we were going to turn it over to you for questions. And this is a photo of the First Avenue sidewalk that was recently completed.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Ryder. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Yeah. Are we better? Okay, thank you. Nope. Can we maybe mute? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Junkie and Ms. Ryder. This is a study item, so we go straight to questions or comments from council. Are there any council members with questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Robertson.
Mayor. Lots to go. Oh, lots of food for you for everything. One question, and then I'll go into some thoughts there. Regarding the 20th Avenue Northeast and a lot of the questions we had, 10, 10, 10. Can you say anything about the decision or the direction to go with a 10-foot sidewalk rather than a narrower sidewalk and a bike lane?
Laura, can you answer?
I can start, yes.
Okay.
So really with 20th Ave, the intention of the 10-foot sidewalk as opposed to a bike lane plus a 10-foot is our best way to accommodate all of the different users. And because this is on one side, it's not necessarily that we are hoping to have a separate bike lane through this space, but bikes and accommodating bikes is still part of the master plan. And so having a space where it's still safe for younger users while still being able to provide a wide enough zone was really the intention. And with this 10-foot sidewalk width, really we're able to have the smallest footprint of any of the different options. So with the bike lanes, you're actually taking up a much larger width and space in this area, which could potentially have more impacts to properties and trees.
Well, I'll just talk for a minute because I want to thank everybody who came for public comment today and really acknowledge that that was a really thoughtful series of commenters and presenters. And please know that you are heard, absolutely. And we have difficult decisions to weigh other considerations, and in some cases weigh the voices of those who aren't here tonight, those with disabilities and mobility challenges, and weigh those into our. Well, I've always, when I've spoken before to individuals, said that my dream is to be able to start every project with how can we, keep trees eliminated to zero. And east looks like it's 0 trees, so that's one way.
Deputy Mayor, it's really broken. I know that's an ongoing thing, but we're
Okay.
getting about 2/3 of it.
I'll lean in. I think it was Ms. Keim who said, understand that we can't save everyone, but we'll try to save as much as we can. And then I hear what's going on with 5th Avenue Northeast, and the fact that, we started with a potential of 90 trees to be removed, and we're down to now 23. That's not 0, and that's not something to, necessarily celebrate, but I do think we are going in the right direction. So my thoughts are on where we're at with the sidewalk, widths and plans, and is that, if 1 foot of sidewalk is the difference between saving a mature tree or cutting it down, absolutely, that's an easy decision. Save the tree. And I also really support, and I thank you for emphasizing it in your report tonight, that you are exploring alternative sidewalk design. Thank you, Ms. Way, for putting that phrase in our head multiple times. So then the question is, how much, what is the greater cost? We have the cost of potentially losing trees. We have potentially, I don't know if these alternatives have costs to the city. We probably want to have some kind of way for figuring out and having an equitable decision-making process for how we do that. But clearly we've heard that the city is not interested, the community is not interested in just clearing down and cutting down the path in order to make way for a sidewalk. That is crystal clear. So I guess, again, I'll say I lend my voice to those, agreeing with that and wanting to keep tree retention as, one of our very top considerations as we make our city safer and more accessible to everyone with mobility challenges, everybody with varying mobility needs. And I actually think it's going to make the comments about changing the character of the communities that we live in our neighborhoods. I run around in a lot of that space between 175th and 185th on the east side, and there aren't a lot of sidewalks. And I think what the tremendous improvement to the character communities would be with that development there and those sidewalks in place. So again, not losing trees, but I think that our city we will achieve our goal of being a more welcoming and inclusive city if we're able to get sidewalks put in with minimal tree impact. And thank you for the work that you're doing to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't go to the public, whatever, I'm sorry, I'm a loss for word, where the public came to talk about 20th Avenue, but that is right or in my hood, in my neighborhood, a neighborhood that I've been there for 30 years. And everything I've heard echoes very much in my heart as to my personal experiences from Richmond Beach Road going down 20th Avenue towards Saltwater Park. We do need sidewalks there, but I'm hearing loud and clear, and I want to apologize to the staff for things that I may say right now because I've always, I think historically, been very supportive of staff recommendations. And even at this point, I am. However, I am hearing loud and clear as a council member, we need to revisit that design on that strip. The sidewalk need is clear. I have walked there many, many times when I had a dog and had to dodge puddles, dodge cars, dodge whatever, lamp post or, utility posts and that sort of thing. And I think that's really what our community was hoping to get out of that, was just a cleaner access to the park, maybe speed bumps or something to slow down the people who just can't go slow on that road. But I don't believe that they saw it coming for a 10-foot wide sidewalk. And there are hopefully other ways that we can have staff think outside the box. I know we're in the design phase and we have already put money into it, but we heard loud and clear from everybody who lives in that neighborhood that this isn't an acceptable design for them. And I'm just pleading that, that we respect some of that where we can, and definitely saving more trees is great, but also the increase of a 10-foot wide sidewalk is probably not quite in keeping with what the community was hoping that avenue going down to Saltwater Park would look like. I have some other notes, but I'm going to just cut that off right now, and hopefully other people will weigh in on either that project or other ones. But while we are in the design phase, we have historically had, when we've had pushback, we've listened, and I hope this will be one of those opportunities, and that you guys do a great job reinventing a hybrid. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I first had a quick question for staff about multi-use trails. Do you know offhand how wide the multi-use trail is at 195th?
So 195th is probably a 12 to 14 foot wide shared use path.
And is there best practices out there about how wide a multi-use path should be? This is sort of just best practices in terms of width.
Yeah, so Laura, if I get this wrong, correct me. The typical standard would be a 12-foot wide trail with 2-foot flat shoulders on both sides, which essentially gets you to be 16 feet. 10 foot is considered more of the minimum standard. Within some areas where pinching down to something narrower is acceptable. We'll go with the standard. Did I get that right, Laura?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. If just one more question about 20th. If you were to put in separated bike trails on both sides of this, is there room for a 6-foot sidewalk on one side of the street and separated bike lanes on going north and south in the right of way?
So if we were to do separated bike lanes, that would provide the buffer that we would need theoretically from traffic. But that is a much larger cross section than what we're looking at now. So there would potentially be more impacts to trees and to properties for tying into the improvements if we did that.
I guess I'm just trying to think about the entire street, but the right of way is there to have, if we were to do sidewalks and separated buffered bike lanes.
I think in most areas we'd have the right of way. There's a few areas, right, where the right of way pinches down, if we wanted that section. But the challenge is the wider we get, then the harder it is to protect trees. There's nice stands of trees on both sides of that street. So we've really looked for something that's as narrow as we can get, so that we don't get out into those trees.
Okay. Thank you.
It's all trade-offs.
Thank you for that. I mean, it's hard to, I think the goal needs to be for any street, there needs to be a complete street that works for all users, which includes people who walk, people who utilize a wheelchair or other sort of assisted mobility device. I think that when we think about it, that needs to be a top priority, recognizing that we may only be able to do a sidewalk on one side of the street as we're building sidewalks across the city. So I mean, I think that safety, to me, safety is the top priority, and safety for all users needs to be the top priority. I do agree with Ms. Way and how she brought up just sort of broadly, when we think about sidewalks and sidewalk design, I think that to the degree that alternative sidewalk designs can be considered relatively early in the design process, I think would be helpful. I think one of the challenges that I saw in Dayton is that not watching it, sort of what's happening every day and what exactly what stage of the process things were. It seemed like there was a lot of negotiation and a lot of deliberation between the community and the city, and also the developer, about the appropriate sidewalk that should go there. And it seemed, my perspective of what happened was that there was a frustration from the community that alternative sidewalk designs were not considered early enough in the process, or at least articulated to the community about why they were considered or not considered at earlier points in the process. I think with data and some of the raised sidewalk, I think really worked well in preserving a vast number of trees, and also making sure that we have the provide mobility for all residents. So, I mean, I think that's my general sort of comment is how can we make sure that these sort of alternatives are considered early in the process, that the public can respond to, but also developers who are concerned and have desires around saving trees, or property owners that have desires around saving trees, but also recognizing that they want sidewalks in front of their properties, and frontage improvements in front of their properties. How do they know where to look, and how to sort of articulate and sort of ask for those kind of alternatives in consideration? I know it's generally provided in the code and the development guidelines, but it may not be sort of clear upfront about how those alternatives can be brought up or considered. And again, that's my perspective, and to the extent that that process can be communicated better, I think that is helpful. Mayor, I can sort of talk more about, I have some general other thoughts about sidewalks and sidewalk designs. I'm willing to sort of wait and let other people talk, especially if they have specific concerns around 20th and 5th.
Whatever you'd like to do is fine. You have the floor.
I will wait and hold off on some other comments about this general sidewalk program, letting other people talk about 20th and 5th.
Okay, great. Councilmember Mork.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate everyone who came and talked tonight. I think it was really informative, and I appreciate all the comments from my colleagues. I think one of the things that, if I could just reflect upon, the part of the reason for wanting sidewalks is wanting a walkable community here in Shoreline. And having a walkable community also is a key factor in reducing greenhouse gases and working on climate change. So they're both working toward the same thing, getting people out of cars. And to get people out of cars, they have to feel safe to do so, whether they're riding a bike or walking, and having trees. And it shouldn't be an either or, it should be an and. And I think several of our speakers really talked to that. Ms. Kime, Ms. Way, Ms. Mcclelland, all of them spoke about having a site-specific sidewalk plan that really recognized what was specifically there and trying to balance the needs of all the people. And I think that's really important. Councilmember Roberts' point on making sure that we do this early enough is, I think, very valid, because as we get further down the process, then it becomes you can't turn the boat around. And I think it's really important for this special design thought to happen. But we must have sidewalks. It's what I hear from people all the time, of the need for sidewalks to be able to get around. Ms. Ryder, my question to you specifically on 20th is the bike lane for experienced bikers, is that on the same level as the sidewalk? Are they on the sidewalk with a piece of paint, or is it a sharrow where they're on the road?
Yeah, so it will still function as a sharrow. So all experienced bikers will still be within 20th. It's really just for users that are not comfortable being in traffic that we have a safe space for them as well.
Thank you. I think that's an important thing as you think about young parents with their children on their learning how to ride, or dogs, or people with strollers, in addition to people with wheelchairs. So it's really important that everybody be able to get around. The other part I would just encourage us all to think about is that we're growing. We have more people. We're trying to get to the station. I think Ms. Junkie's reference to the TMP is really important. I'm really interested in learning more about the reprioritization schedule for 2023. I think that's going to be quite informative. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Povey.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, if you don't mind, please, would you be kind to clarify for me? Did you say you reduced each size from 6 to 5 foot?
On Fifth Avenue, there's a section that we reduced to 5 feet. Yes.
And I take it that you made this decision based on community inputs that came from the public. Good job on that. I really appreciate that you take all that into consideration, because I was reading and just looking at the complexity of this project and how you and your team have been so involved in it is so much appreciated. Just want to say that. On the other side, I'm looking at funding. I saw Sound Transit given the 2 million. I'm just curious, is that a restrictive fund just tied to these specific capital projects, or can it be reappropriated?
The Sound Transit funds are specifically for this Fifth Avenue project and for the one that we're starting design now on First Avenue.
So just assuming, if this project doesn't come to fruition, are those funds supposed to be returned?
So I can speak to that really quickly. Sound Transit gave us $2 million for each station, and we gave them some options. So we would have to reprogram it into some other sidewalk pedestrian facility within the 185th station area, recognizing that the commitment is also to complete these by 2024. If we were to do nothing on 5th and wanted to reprioritize that money somewhere else, we would have a hard time getting something done by 2024.
Thank you for that. And also just want to touch quickly on what Deputy Mayor mentioned earlier. It's important that we reevaluate, that is, gather all the necessary. I know a lot of work has been done already, but whatever we can do to make it as Councilmember Mark said earlier, it is and not or. And so if we can work together as a team and as a family and as a community, I'll support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ramsdale.
Thank you, Mayor. So this message is for Laura. I'm kind of curious. I live in the Westminster Triangle neighborhood, and I was kind of very interested to see, look at that design. And I mean, I think, a 10 to 12 foot wide sidewalk for Westminster Way is appropriate. I just think there's the traffic moves very fast along that road, and I mean, in order for public safety, I think it's important to have wide sidewalks. Also, there's bike lanes that are heading north on Greenwood that would, for anybody on a bicycle, it makes a lot of sense for cyclists who are heading north. And hopefully someday we will have like Shoreline Place fully developed, and cyclists from Seattle can have the Shoreline Place as a destination to visit. So having a safe bike lane. I mean, I was a bike commuter for 10 years when I worked with the city of Seattle, and I felt like I was putting my life in my hands every time I went rode to work. So to be able to have a safe way for cyclists to go to Shoreline Place, I think it makes sense having that 10 to 12 foot wide sidewalk. I am wondering about like what would be the impact of trees with a 10 or 12 foot sidewalk for on that side of Westminster Way. Would you be able to answer that?
So really, we've looked at it in a very, very conceptual level at this point. We haven't started design at all, but based on just GIS information, there's definitely tree impacts along there to be able to get that desired width.
Okay.
And we really wouldn't know the counts now, but it's not nothing, that's for sure.
Okay. I'm also curious, like when it sounds like the other question I had was like how far are you along in the design process for Westminster Way? And it sounds like you're kind of in the early stages of that design process. So will there be an opportunity for the community to have some input regarding that design? Let's say, I personally, 10, 12 is fine. What if with the neighborhood similar to what's happened on the 20th Ave situation is very strongly in favor of, let's say, an 8 or 10 foot sidewalk? Would there be an opportunity for some changes to that design if there's a lot of public pressure to reduce that width?
Absolutely. And to reiterate with 20th, we are very early in the design stages still, so we're able to incorporate comments and changes there, and it would be in a similar time frame that we would look at Westminster as well.
Okay. The other thing I noticed when I was looking at the staff report, that there's crosswalks at 145th and 149th. The neighborhood, that I live in, a lot of folks who go to would like to go to Central Market and that go shopping in that area, cross at 153rd, and 153rd is kind of like taking your life in your hands. You're just like, because cars are flying down there really fast, and you're just like sprinting across the road. I was wondering if there's I would suggest, so looking at having some sort of a crosswalk at 153rd, incorporating that in the plan. And then just like one last thing I want to say is I really agree with a lot of the comments that Councilmember Roberts, Councilmember Mork have talked about regarding looking at the reason why we need sidewalks that serve disabled population, that serve pedestrians, that serve cyclists, because we really need to get people out of their cars. We're in a climate crisis, and we have to do whatever we can to get people out of their cars and reduce our carbon footprint. Shoreline has to. I'm in support of Shoreline doing its part, and the impression I'm getting from reading the report is you guys are trying really hard in that regard. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I wanted to add just a couple things to that, and then we'll return to Councilmember Roberts and anyone else who'd like to make second round comments. So I appreciate everything that was said tonight. I agree with pretty much everything members of council said, along with most of what members of the public said. And mostly that we're not approaching this from a trees versus sidewalks perspective. I think everyone who spoke to us and all of us already get that those are both important pieces of climate change and important pieces of making a city livable and important pieces of a whole lot of other factors. the question then becomes in the details of, can we build a sidewalk that gets us to that environmental and social benefit while still preserving a specific tree? And I agree with all the comments that were made about us already having an arsenal of equipment to confront that possibility. And Ms. Way did a great job of summarizing many of them. We also have the example on Dayton where we had an elevated sidewalk to protect the critical root zone. And my only request, and it's probably already being done, is that when we get a project like Dayton, we do that analysis at the very front. Dayton was not a city project. That was a project from a private developer that was submitted to us. We then got a lot of public comment and then pushed back. And after several iterations, we came up with a plan that I think absolutely maximizes both the mobility and tree aspects. Some trees were cut and it was not, maybe the dream sidewalk, but I think we got there. And on the city projects, I'm hoping we do that upfront and sort of start with, how can we do this with zero tree loss? Okay, that's not going to work. How can we do this with minimal tree loss? On the specific widths, what I heard public commenters saying on 20th is mostly that 10 feet feels wide. If it's a 0 to 3 tree total loss with that plan, not really seeing a tree impact. And for me, my experience as someone who runs that thing, and I really make people nervous when I'm coming up at speed on the 5.5 foot sidewalk, and so I have to get out into traffic. And as someone who walks along with my boys, who at 8 are now way too old to want to hold dad's hand, but still make me really nervous as they, wander like a little, random particle towards traffic, and I have to grab them and pull them back. The 10-foot sidewalk has some utility. So I do encourage us to consider the public comment, but also to bear in mind that what I heard was more concern with a big change rather than a specific concern with the design. So with that said, I think everything else has pretty much already been said, and I want to just thank staff and council for this presentation so far. Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments sort of broadly. I forgot to add one comment about Fifth Avenue. Looking at the design, are there physical buffers on those bike lanes being planned, or is it just a painted buffer?
They're just painted buffers.
I think we should I personally think whenever we're designing bike lanes, we need to make sure that there's a physical buffer on bike lanes. We need our bike lanes to be safe for all users, not just the Councilmember Ramsdale's who are just willing to just ride and put their. We don't want people to feel like they're putting their lives in the hand, riding a bike, getting to work or getting to shopping or wherever they are going to. So whenever we're putting bike lanes, I really think as a city policy, we need to make sure that especially if we need to put that physical barrier in. A couple of sort of broader concerns. I do think there's a place where we need to, as a council, take a look at this in terms of broadly in the sidewalks, and this speaks to widths. Is the current code and guidelines talk about 6-foot sidewalks when there's residential, but a 10-foot sidewalk when there is I believe it's a multi-use or something non-residential on that street. As we are building in around the light rail stations, especially. And if the state legislature does something around changing what is allowed within our city, that distinction between residential and multi-use is going to fall apart. And I think it already is kind of falling apart. So do we need, within the light rail station specifically, as all of these things, whether they're townhomes or whether they're something larger, do all our townhomes need to be? Would a townhome on a street or the end of a street require? I think we need to consider this as a council. Does a townhome at the end of the street mean that we have to put a 10-foot sidewalk down the entire street? And I think that we need to think about that, and whether that distinction between residential and multi-use should be based on street classification or something else, rather than is there something non-residential on that particular street. A couple other comments. I would like to, my friends, the within the city of Los Angeles, I saw a few weeks ago this very interesting program about sidewalk maintenance that they're planning, of thinking of ways of how individuals and individual property owners, I mean, there already is an expectation in the city code about maintaining sidewalks here in the city, but the city of LA has this interesting program that I think they're working through about how do we get, how do we make sure that the sidewalk is perpetually maintained, and do it as sort of on a more regular basis rather than sort of the I won't describe as ad hoc, but sort of this, we have funding to repair sidewalks. We've underfunded repair of sidewalks over, well, since the city was founded and since King County started putting sidewalks here in the city. So how do we actually have this regular schedule where sidewalks are maintained much better than they are, rather than letting them fall into disrepair, and then we have to then spend more money to repair them. So I've sent the city manager some information about this, and I hope that she shares it with the council. And finally, I know that it was said that the sidewalk prioritization matrix is going to be rerun with the same criteria. I actually don't like this criteria, largely because, for one particular reason. The safety criteria in those matrix, I think, double one particular count, which is the sidewalk matrix has both speed, so what's the maximum, the speed limit on the particular road, and then the classification of the road. And there is a certain amount of, well, the higher speeds, streets with higher speeds are usually arterials and sort of ranked on the arterial scale. So there's in some ways there's a doubling up on that particular matrix, or metric, sorry. And I think that we should really take a look at the criteria and think not about classification of the road, but the volume of the road. How many motor vehicles is being used on that, what in peak volume, rather than the classification. Because we have some streets, especially sort of frontage on several of our local schools, which are not arterials. They're local, either local roads or primary roads with a relatively high volume of traffic and relatively small humans who like to walk on those streets, who use those streets. And so I think that when we think about safety, I think some of the safety metrics they're right, but I don't think they're capturing exactly the safety measures we want them to capture. And so I would encourage the council to take a look at those criteria to make sure that we're actually capturing and trying to get a sense of which streets are the least safe, rather than what's actually being captured, or what's currently being captured. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Terry, do you want to respond?
Sure. As Councilmember Roberts mentioned, he did send some information. It's called a point of sale program, where homeowners, when they are selling their properties, have to get repairs done on sidewalks in order for the sale to be complete. So you have provided that information to staff. In fact, they had a slide tonight potentially to have in the report, but given the length of conversation we thought there was going to be, we put that aside. But that is something that staff is looking at. And as he indicated, our code already does really state that repair and maintenance of sidewalks is a responsibility of the adjacent property owner. But as you can see throughout our city, that has not been enforced, way before even Shoreline became a city, and there is a pretty significant cost of that. So.
All right, any further questions or comments from council on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for presenting. And I believe we move on to item 8B, which is a discussion of the proposed ARPA business recovery funding allocation update. And I think it's Mr. Dom and Ms. Habte, correct?
That's correct.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. Good to be with you this evening. I had some trouble finding my mute button. It's great to be with you tonight to discuss the business recovery and stabilization funding allocation out of the city's share of ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act. We are going to be joined tonight by the city's consultant. The Shoreline Chamber of Commerce was our partner in the phase 1 business outreach and analysis work. Council will recall this was previously discussed, and the city embarked on this work with the chamber as our partner, who has hired Salam Habte, who has been performing the business outreach and analysis work for us, and will be providing us with an update on the outreach and engagement with businesses in the community, what we've learned, some preliminary findings and recommendations, and we will discuss potential phase 2 work with the ARPA dollars with you this evening as well. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Salam Habte here, who will go into more detail about the outreach so far and what we've learned. And as I mentioned, she'll conclude with some recommendations before we move to the staff recommendation for phase 2. So with that, I will turn it over to Salam, who will take it from here. Salam, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor and councils. Thank you, Debbie and Nate. I'm really excited to share some of my findings for small business outreach that started on October 2021. And Jessica, I can't find my button. Next slide. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So the outreach has been a great way to connect, build, and really find out what business needs are, very specific to different businesses. And I also have follow-up as maybe next step, since we are on phase 1. And the objective of this outreach is to really cultivate ongoing relationship and better understanding business needs, especially in light of challenges of COVID-19 and economic recovery. As we know, a lot of businesses have been hit, and it's been hard for a lot of small business owners. And we contacted, to be exact, about 120, actually exactly 120 as of December, no, not December, my apologies, as of January 31st, 2022. And some of the businesses are itemized here: eating and drinking, establishments, general merchandise store, nursing and residential cares, care facilities, construction, education services, health and personal care services, personal and laundry services, repair, maintenance, and social assistance are some of the businesses that we did outreach on. And the outreach effort has mostly been in person, so really meeting business owners face to face and building a relationship. And we also did phone call and emails. And there's a lot of challenges that our small businesses in the Shoreline area are facing. Some of it includes not finding skilled employees, and small business owners are doing a lot of the front end, back end of the businesses, putting in at least 60 hours or more to stay open, and not finding employees. Of course, they have to cover for that as well. And supplies are hard to find, and a drastic price increase. It's been hard for a lot of businesses, and on Aurora Avenue, mostly business owners are seeing an increase in homeless population in their neighborhood. So that's kind of a safety concern. Most businesses are also experiencing slow traffic because of fear of exposure of COVID-19. And many landlords continue to raise prices. And the other most significant challenge that I've run into is most immigrant business owners are lacking access to information in regards of business recovery. And with those findings, we have opportunities and initiations and connections. So our opportunities are financial resources, employer and employee connections, collaborations and training, networking and advertising, and reducing waste. And some of the initiations and connections that we've made and still being in phase one, still happening, is a small business flex fund, workforce connection, fire department, Shoreline Community College connection, Shoreline School District Culinary Department, introduction to Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, connection to Recology, and connection to Beauty Academy are some of the initiations and connections that we are working on. And here's a survey that was sent out to City of Seattle and the surrounding areas by CAI. It's economic consulting firm, and there are some great findings here. We see Shoreline had a survey in March 87, a survey in May 49, December 25. So we got about 2% from the Shoreline area out of the whole Seattle and surroundings. So it does seem like we're lining up with the other suburb cities that have about the same amount of survey. And there's some really interesting findings on the right side. I won't go through that, but it's available. And there's also another great survey results that shows how our businesses are affected and statewide. And this is another interesting one about unemployment claims. This is a comparison between the 3 years, 2019, 2021, during that COVID time. And November, end of November. So there are some really interesting facts there. And here's another survey of Federal Reserve summary of commentary on economic conditions. So this is another interesting one. And this is actually really specific to District of San Francisco, but more on Western US. So there's some interesting facts that actually really applies to the Shoreline small businesses as well. And here is some recommendations on next step. So part of the ARPA funding will be allocated for businesses who are in need of business coaching, as businesses trying to navigate opportunities or trying to doing business differently. I think this is an important piece to help them recover, and offer gift cards to business owners to help them recruit new hires. and citywide networking events to bring business owners and residents together to support local small businesses. And that concludes my presentation. So I'll pass it to Nate. Thank you.
Thank you, Salam. So, Mayor and Council, at this point, we will happily take questions or allow for any discussion of these the findings and recommendations of our consultant. And as I mentioned, we do have staff recommendation and a brief overview of that, as well as very brief summary of what's primarily in the staff reports. We won't need to belabor that, and we can take some discussion or questions at this point, or we can move through and do so at the conclusion. Whatever.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember, probably we'll get to your question. I would generally prefer that we complete staff reports before we get to discussion, rather than breaking up into two. Councilmember Povey.
Please, sorry, I mistakenly pressed that.
Oh, okay. All right. And I apologize for interjecting there, but if you can finish your presentation, Mr. Dom, and then we'll take questions about the entirety. Thank you.
So, a little excited to move ahead there. So, yeah, again, thank you, Salam. And just to reiterate, it really has been a tremendous experience for us to really utilize this opportunity of these ARPA dollars to reach out and make contact and understand better from our business community their needs and what they're dealing with. And as she mentioned, lots of good economic data regionally, nationally, and locally. And while some of that has aged a bit, we're still finding these issues really do persist. And so see this as a great opportunity to bring additional expertise to support our businesses in putting a business plan under what they're currently doing, or bringing expertise into some of the challenges they're facing or opportunities they're seeing, whether it's expansion or selling their business. There's a variety of things that a really highly trained and expert advisory service professional can provide. And we have found the Small Business Development Centers of Washington to really be a great candidate to provide this service. Our recommendation would be to move forward with a level of support that would provide for the equivalent of a full-time dedicated advisor for Shoreline businesses. And this, the remaining funding in the ARPA allocation for business support is adequate for this, and there actually would be additional money to potentially explore some of the other recommendations as well. But we wanted to begin with getting the expertise available and into directly supporting our businesses in the community. And as you can see here, and as discussed in the staff report, there are ways to continue that moving forward after the end of the ARPA period. And so with that, I will just briefly summarize that we would be, if council was in support, we would be moving forward with this, and it would be something you'd see in the budgeting process this year as we look at the 2023 and 2024 budgeting process. And as I mentioned, we'd be continuing to explore some of the other options and recommendations with those remaining ARPA business support dollars. And so with that, happy to take, again, any questions for me or for, I'm sure Salam would be happy to take them as well, or just allow for discussion.
Thank you. Questions or discussion from council members? Councilmember Povey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to revisit phase one. And so on slide number 7 of the presentation, Shoreline business is contacted, and you have stated 120 businesses specifically. And looking at the industry categories, I did not see anything arts in there. And then on slide number 12, you stated 30% of arts, entertainment, or recreation. Majority of these individuals lost 91 to 100% of income, looking at the nature of their profession. And so can you clarify those 2 slides for me, please?
Yes, so we have continued the outreach, as Salam mentioned, and so staff report generated kind of at a point in time, and we have continued. One of the primary areas of focus was the Shoreline Small Business Support Program grant recipients. So we wanted to begin with a follow-up and find out how those businesses are faring. And as you may recall, that was a program that was based primarily on businesses in our commercial areas and sort of Main Street commercial storefronts, and hoping to maintain their presence and help them weather through, as we find it very difficult to secure commercial users and commercial space in the city, and kind of wanting to make sure to keep that that focus in place. I had a great conversation today actually with our arts administrator, and discussion about bringing more arts businesses and arts professionals into this conversation to make sure we're connecting with everyone. And we're beginning to move outside of the commercial corridors. I think we're finding more opportunities to speak with more of the home-based businesses, and that helps to diversify to arts and all manner of other categories as well. So there are 3,000 business licenses registered to Shoreline. There's at least 1,000, I believe, that are actually Shoreline location businesses. So we're just getting started. And you point out that we have found in our survey of the data landscape where those impacts are, and it's certainly informing where we want to go next. I don't know if Salam has any additional comments she wants to share on that, but I'll allow you to speak if you want to. I also, sorry, I need to mention our partner in the chamber, Paul Barrera, who's the chair of the Chamber Economic Development Committee, is with us, and I apologize. I didn't see him earlier when I was introducing Salam, but I want to acknowledge Paul is here as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Barrera, was there something specific you wanted to add? You're welcome to have a minute or two to speak if you'd like, or not.
On behalf of the chamber, I want to appreciate and acknowledge Salam Habti. We selected Salam based on her experience in the Ethiopian community and other communities from East Africa and immigrant communities in promoting businesses in the North Seattle and South Everett area. She was a competitive candidate, and we selected her on the selection committee. Just for the council's understanding, was immediate past president of the chamber, Tim Norton of Health Chiropractic, and then Joseph Irons and Irons Brothers Construction. So we voted unanimously to hire Ms. Habti based on her prior experience. And the idea of having interim police chief Ryan Abbott as the speaker for the next chamber luncheon meeting was her idea. She brought it up at our chamber board meeting recently when she found that a lot of the businesses along Aurora Avenue corridor expressed concern over rising homelessness and other property crime issues that seem to be facing the Seattle area, and how business owners wanted to connect with the law enforcement community to discuss their concerns. And so the interim chief is coming in to talk about what the Shoreline Police Department is doing with the King County Sheriff's Office and entertain that discussion. So Ms. Habte was an excellent choice, and we're glad to have her. And I'm glad to be here tonight to support her.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments from council members? All right, I had one question, probably best addressed by Mr. Dom. We discussed navigators back a while ago with ARPA funding, and that was a specific program to help folks figure out what aid sources were available to address specific COVID-related business needs. Is the consultant, which seems to have the business consultant part of the program, which seems to have a much broader scope, is that in replacement to the navigators, or how does that relate to the navigator program?
So the community navigator, I'm sorry, I don't have the correct exact phrasing. We did land on a more easily comprehensible title for the community, and that person is on board and is providing contact. That's Judy Kuguru, and she's in contact with across the community on a variety of needs. And this is providing us, so the work that we're doing with the chamber and that Salam is doing for us is really hyper focused on business, and it's a really specific discipline and a certain, much more specific set of resources and information, and so there's cross dialogue and sharing, and one example of that is a great conversation that we have ongoing with the Shoreline the Shoreline Community College and the workforce and the work training programs that they're doing, as there is at the same time that there's a really, as you saw from Salam's findings, there's a demand for workers and there's a need to hire. And there's also a sense of frustration in the community about a lack of jobs and a lack of opportunity. And so we're really trying to work together from both sides of that in our partnerships in the community, in both business and in the community side, to help kind of try to bridge that divide and help to bring those folks together. And so that's just one example of it, where this work is similar, but the overlap is more of where there's a handoff between the expertise and the sort of distinct disciplines, if that answers the question.
Thank you. I may not have understood the answer, but my question was very specific. We identified a real need to have someone help businesses navigate existing assistance programs. Example would be the Paycheck Protection Program, but there's a whole giant world of other federal and state and county programs that can benefit businesses with specific funding needs. And we funded what at the time we called navigators, who help businesses find funding sources in other agencies' grant programs. And I don't want to lose that, because I think that's a very real need as long as these federal and state programs remain in effect. I don't want to replace that with folks who say, hey, you need a business plan. So as long as we've got that remaining, what we call navigators in effect, great, but I don't want to replace that with something that's different. And I see Ms. Terry may have an answer to my specific question.
What I was going to say is those positions really helped with some of the research of what is available. And so I think as Nate was saying, their focus going forward is really on more individuals to the human service side of things, and the business side of things will work through Salam and Nate to help businesses connect. So they've been sending out newsletters with, if you need help to get into the payment protection program or whatever it is, that they are making those resource knowledge available to the various businesses. If a business needs help, they can reach out to us for that. And then I think this is an augmented need that has been found through the work that Salam has been doing with businesses to say, hey, for the long term to really recover, this is what we're going to need is help in business planning. And so to answer your question, we still have those services. It may not look exactly as we originally envisioned with the role of the navigators, but we're still addressing the types of services for businesses with these resources. So.
All right, thank you. Are there other questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, thank you. Oh, Councilmember Mork, I apologize.
I was slow on the raise hand, my fault. I was curious about the gift card program. What is the approximate percent that is of what we're talking about here? Thank you.
Sure, I can take that, and Salam can kind of color in any details. But currently, our recommendation is to move forward with the business advising, and so out of the $500,000 in ARPA dollars that were allocated for business support, there's a total of $407,000 remaining, and so the business advisory services would, over the 3-year period of the ARPA period, would total $363,000. So it is I think $44,000 would be what is remaining. And so the gift cards for businesses to support, to promote hiring events or job fairs, or to just an incentive for job applicants or job seekers to potentially have kind of a door prize or incentive. is something we're continuing to explore. So we have a meeting upcoming with our partners at the college who are putting on the next job fair that is happening in town, and the chamber is a partner on that, I believe. So we're continuing to explore, what's the right way to approach that, and is that something that's really a meaningful approach that will kind of meaningfully move the needle. But that is one of the, as you noted, that's one of the recommendations for what we are exploring for a future phase for what to do with those remaining dollars. If that helps answer this question.
All right. All right, thank you. Was lost in the mute. Are there other council members with any questions? All right, seeing none, thank all three of you for presenting, and we look forward to seeing that program as it develops. We are now going to recess into an executive session for a period of 45 minutes as authorized by RCW 42.30.110.1 to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase, and RCW 42.30.110.1I to discuss with legal counsel potential litigation to which the city is or is likely to become a party. The council is not expected to take final action following the executive session. And council members, there are links in our memo. We exit this meeting and go to the different meeting, and then we can come back. So I will see you all in a moment in executive session. All right, thank you. Thank you. And similar to Smith, I apologize for the confusion there. I have rejoined the meeting because the executive session is continuing. The council is extending the executive session until 10 p.m., which is the limit we can go.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the executive session has concluded and I am adjourning today's City